Is disgraced British actor Lawrence Fox a champion of free speech, a man who stood up for men but was persecuted by the establishment? Or is he a horrid misogynist who used the excuse of free speech to spread hatred and was then rightly put in his place? Hi, I'm Futurist Marcus T. Anthony, and in this episode of Power and Presence, I'm going to discuss the recent Lawrence Fox case and suggest its relevance to the futures of society, mind and technology, which is what this channel is all about, and most importantly, about your future and your power. How can you stand for a difficult cause and not get cancelled or destroyed? And don't forget to subscribe because there'll be more interesting topics like this coming in the near future. Now, in case you haven't heard the story, Lawrence Fox is a regular contributor to GB News, a British TV media organisation which has a focus on free speech. Last week, Lawrence Fox was invited onto a GB News segment to comment on a video clip which featured journalist Ava Evans. When the issue of men's mental health and suicide was raised in that video, including the possibility of establishing a special minister for men, Ava Evans was dismissive, suggesting that this would, quote, feed into the culture war and make an enemy out of women, unquote. Now, I personally do find Evans' attitude to be rather irrational, in the sense that addressing men's problems need not take away the focus on women's issues. And I agree that men's issues should have much greater attention than they currently do. In many Western countries, men have fallen alarmingly behind women in a wide array of areas, including in education, longevity and well-being, suicide and workplace accidents and fatalities, incarceration rates, and even income up to early middle age. And we know that young men in the US are increasingly falling out of the dating scene, with almost 2/3 having given up on dating altogether, even casual dating. Some of these disparities are long-standing, while others have worsened considerably in recent years. And we know from many scientific studies that men's suffering tends to generate less compassion from observers and society than does the suffering of women. In general, women's problems are more often presented as gender issues, while issues that disproportionately affect men are not. For example, almost nobody sees police shootings of civilians in the US as a gender issue, despite the fact that around 95% of those killed are male. Further, as many as 98% of black people shot dead by police each year in America are male, yet typically only the racial disparity is focused upon in the media and in most academic studies of the issue. That's quite a blind spot. I could go on, but I think you get the point. As we enter the middle years of the 21st century, there are many social problems that disproportionately affect men, and I believe it's vital that we address these more seriously before they develop into major social unrest and political radicalization of marginalized male populations. And by the way, that's the most likely future we face unless we practice smart foresight. Now, having said all that, let's return to our friend Lawrence Fox and his response to Ava Evans' arguably insensitive comments. On GB News, Lawrence Fox said, and I shall quote him directly, "We're past the watershed, so I can say this. Show me a single self-respecting man that would like to climb into bed with that woman, ever, ever. That little woman has been fed, spoon-fed oppression day after day after day. If I met her in a bar and that was like sentence 3, the chances of me just walking away are huge. Who'd want to shag that?" Unquote. Just so you know which words are mine and which are Mr. Fox's. Unfortunately for Fox, he forgot that he wasn't speaking in the men's locker room, and his comments went viral and invoked the ire of many viewers. GB News then subsequently fired Fox and the host of that segment, Dan Wooten, as well as Calvin Robinson, who came out to publicly defend the pair. Now, GB News executive Angelos Frangopoulos later stated that Fox's remarks were, quote, appalling and way past the limits of acceptance. He said, "We're about free speech, but it's about being done in a respectful and proper way, and that was not the way that conversation played out." He added, "That comment should not have gone to air, and that should have been properly challenged, quite frankly." Unquote. Personally, I'm on board with Frangopoulos' perspective. To put this drama in some context, Lawrence Fox has regularly advocated for a form of free speech absolutism, stating that obnoxious and even hateful speech should be tolerated, because then others can at least hear that speech and respond appropriately. And this seems to be the attitude that underpinned his outburst on GB News. Now for my take. Beyond the obnoxious nature of his comments, Lawrence Fox has not been very smart here. Yes, that means he's been dumb. A bit of a mug, as we say in Australia. The harsh truth that Lawrence Fox has to face is that he's now unemployed and disgraced, while the women and more militant end of the feminist movement he criticised have been validated and emboldened. It's a big win for them and a big loss for Lawrence Fox, and for anyone wishing to put forth considered critiques of politically correct ideas. And that's because Lawrence Fox's response to someone dismissing male suicide was not considered. It was crass and spiteful. And that's why he loses. Thanks for coming, Mr. Fox, and don't forget to close the door on your way out. The key point I'm making is that you have to understand the rules of the system and who has the power today in most institutions in the Western world. Many of those rules emerge from intersectional hierarchies, which in turn have arisen from the institutional takeover by postmodernist and neo-Marxist ideology. Therefore, intersectional hierarchies are now embedded explicitly or implicitly in much of our public discourse. The intersectional ladder ranks individuals and groups in society according to how marginalized they are deemed to be. When two parties collide, power is typically ceded to the more marginalized individual or group. And yes, they get dealt a more favorable hand and get to play with more lax rules. In other words, the system seeks to make the playing field fair by making things more unfair for those it considers privileged. And by the way, that's why feminists, both moderate and militant, usually have to cede power to the trans movement, because trans trumps female on the intersectional hierarchy. So, and as frustrating as this may be when we confront someone or engage someone higher than us on the intersectional ladder, the key is understanding which rung on the ladder you are on. If you're significantly lower than those with whom you're engaging or debating, your chances of getting a boot in the face while the establishment nods in approval are high. And if you cross the line by a large margin, like Lawrence Fox did, you'll get kicked off the ladder altogether. Unless people learn the rules and learn to play smart, they're just going to suffer big time. And they may well find that they have no power to engage in civil discourse at all. This is the lesson many people don't seem to be learning, including Mr. Fox. And no, this is not an endorsement by me of this system, which I think needs improvement. At a broader social and psychological level, anger is best negotiated responsibly. In the current age, where social media giants and the money-hungry, frontal lobe bypassing algorithms are constantly eating at us, it has never been more important to develop a conscious relationship with technology and with our minds and bodies. Everyone gets angry and offended sometimes. Me too. Indeed, outrage may be entirely understandable where grave injustices have been committed or where people are being disrespected and violated. But we still have to develop what I call cognitive responsibility, being responsible for our mental world. And in the end, that means being respectful of all people, regardless of their standing within the social or ideological structure in which we're embedded. When you see people interacting respectfully with those below them on the ladder, whether the ladder be intersectional, social, economic, and so on, that is a true indicator of their psychological maturity, their character, and their mastery of the system, which is one of the 5 pillars of the authentic self, as I describe in my book, Power and Presence. Recently, Lawrence Fox has not been so much a master of the system as a mug of the system. And as we sometimes say in Australia, don't be a mug, mate. But I've got nothing against Lawrence Fox, and I hope he's able to pull through his current self-inflicted crisis. So, if you're a professor, can you respect the janitor who cleans the halls? As a banker, can you be present with a homeless beggar? If you're trans, can you honour the dignity of old-school feminists? As a woman, can you acknowledge the issues which disproportionately affect men? And if you're a proud male and have swallowed the proverbial red pill like Lawrence Fox, can you stoop to engage respectfully with a fourth wave feminist? Now, there's a good chance that your political and social tribe is self-appointed as being morally and intellectually superior to your tribal opponents. But are you willing to shake the hand of a member of that other tribe? To see them not as disgusting or beneath you, but as human equally, and to truly listen to them. All of us can still choose to treat others with dignity out of an awareness of our shared humanity. The conscious evolution, which I believe can help us rise above our current impasse, is founded upon realizing that we humans share a common experience above and beyond our philosophical, religious, political, and ethnic differences. We're more similar than different. Being aware of the rules of intersectionalism is just one important distinction that can assist in your developing mastery of the system today. But admittedly, it's just one, and there are plenty of others. It won't cover all your bases, but it just might help you avoid the fate of people like Lawrence Fox. Now, looking at things from a distance perspective, the current institutional stranglehold of intersectionalism will soon pass and be replaced by some other philosophical ideal. Hopefully, we will be smart enough to retain the good from the current system and let go of the not so good. And may we be wise enough to create greater futures by including the people within our current imperfect institutions. For if we simply cast them adrift, they will in time return as the new angry rebels to fight the new establishment, only in some other guise. Just as today, many from the old establishment like to throw spanners in the current machine, or because we called them deplorable and excommunicated them, leaving them with no political or societal home. But not me, of course. In the end, you have to start to realize that there is a very fundamental form of power that nobody can take away from you, and that is your moment of agency, your capacity to be present to your thoughts and feelings as they arise within you, regardless of what is occurring around you, and then make wise choices. The truth is that the radical feminists and the wokesters can't take away that power, nor the red pillars, nor the Trumpers. But you can very well give your power away to them by constantly reacting to the world via their narrative and their frame, all merrily orchestrated by the algorithms. Now, some like to joke about Trump derangement syndrome, where after the 2016 US election, individuals and entire social groups seemingly allowed their minds to become chronically obsessed with every word spoken by the tangerine tyrant. But there's also Biden derangement syndrome, woke derangement syndrome, fascist derangement syndrome. I could go on. But don't give your power away and become one of those people. For that would be a great irony indeed. Become a master of the system, not a mug, mate. Think about that. See you again soon in the Futures.